Hi, I'm Emma.
And my name is Rob.
And welcome to this episode of Hope and the City. On this episode, we're interviewing Brian Green and Simon Reckless about their experiences with PTSD.
This is something that affects many of us directly or family members and to different degrees. So we really hope that you find this hopeful. We hope that you find this helpful, and it's good to talk about these difficult subjects which we all face and then bring them into the realm of hope. So we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi, my name's Emma, and welcome to our Hope and the City podcast.
Yeah, my name's Rob, and in this, our second season, we've got some guests with us today as we take on a topic which probably affects more people than they realise.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really pleased to be able to welcome Brian Green and Simon Reckless to join us in the studio here for this recording. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Brian, would you like to tell us maybe a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you did, and yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm 62 years old.
What's your name and where'd you come from?
62 and a half, actually. Married to Julie, and we have two children, Sam, 21, Libby, 19. And I've lived in Plymouth my whole life, pretty much. And I've been a Christian just about my whole life. And so I would say that's the midlife blood. But my history-wise, I joined the Marines at 17, went to the Falklands in 1982, left the Marines after a bad back injury in 1989, joined the police in 1989, did 23 years with them.
Wow.
15 years on the firearms team, which was great, loved that. And then I've been retired since 2012.
Okay, so what do you do now, Brian?
I'm a pastoral worker for a Christian charity called Aggie Westerns.
Oh, okay.
What do they do?
They pastoral support primarily for serving people at the Navy and Royal Marines. They're all over the country, but I just do pretty much Bickley Barracks at 4-2 Commando and some at Raleigh as well for the Navy.
So when you say pastoral support, the things that people are wrestling with, I guess military, we're thinking post-traumatic stress disorder, things like that?
And all sorts of stuff, really.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so there's marital stuff, there's like career issues.
Right.
And a lot of, because of the breakdown of the family unit, a lot of these people don't have relationships with dads. And so often I'm finding myself being the dad.
Wow.
And so like even just a few days ago, some bloke came in and said, I've no idea what to do with my career. I think I'm being messed around, And after an hour and a half, he said, oh, that's fantastic. Thanks ever so much. I've been able to unpack a lot today, and I never thought I would.
Giving people someone to talk to. That's great.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be a dad thing. So,
fabulous. So, Simon, lovely to have you join us as
you.
well. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you've done?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I'm Simon. I'm married to Becky. We've got two daughters, Hannah and Phoebe. They're 6 and 3. I joined the Marines at the age of 20 in 2007. Finished the following summertime and then deployed to Afghanistan. For my first tour of Afghanistan. That was my only tour of Afghanistan, actually. Did a couple of years after that in the Marines and then went to Bible college for 3 years. Did tree surgery for 7 years. And then I also work at Aggie Westerns as a pastoral worker. So I'm on the naval base in Devonport.
Oh, okay.
It was Brian that sort of hooked me up with Aggie Westerns. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So really, I guess what we've invited you here to talk about is we've had, we know you just from in and around kind of over the years, church environments, things like that. So, and we know that we've had conversations with you where you've mentioned that you've experienced PTSD. So we've invited you guys here and you said you'd be happy to talk about your experience.
Yeah,
so
that's fine, yeah.
Maybe whichever one of you would like to just tell us a little bit about when
Simon
you
can go
experienced,
first if you like.
Okay, when you experienced PTSD and how that came about.
I think I first admitted that I had PTSD about 4 or 5 years ago, but it was actually sort of post Afghanistan, I think. So I joined 4-2 Commando, and within about 2 weeks I was flying out to Afghanistan. That was my first time on an aeroplane ever. Had a 2 weeks pre-deployment training, whereas everyone else had about up to sort of a year.
How old were you then?
I was 21 then.
Right.
21. Yeah. So flying out to Afghanistan, I was a new guy as well, so obviously felt, really.
So what stage was this at then? Was it all kicking off by the time you got there, or was it developing, or?
Yeah, so Herrick 5 was the real, that's when it really kicked off. So that sort of carried on until about Herrick 14, I think. So it's
So what
smack
were you
bang in the
going
middle.
on to then? What were you going into?
Herrick 9.
Nine. So it's been well established by then.
Yeah, so I spent 3 months in Kabul, 3 months in Lashkar, which is Helmand province. And I was just getting it in the neck from my boss straight away. Who's this? He was quite controlling, to be honest. That didn't help. So I felt constantly inadequate.
So what was your job?
Just a foot soldier, infantry,
Right.
light machine gunner. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So what happened then when you were out there? So it must have been tough. I mean, we hear things on the news, but I'm probably pretty ignorant to a lot of it. But you came out of it with, as you said, PTSD, but not really knowing it at the time.
Yeah. So we sort of had to respond to the aftermath of some suicide bombers, and seeing human remains. That it was quite graphic, and I found it quite sickening at the time. But surprisingly, that wasn't what caused my PTSD. It was things that were out of my control. So I was able to rationalise those things. You know, they were the enemy in my eyes. They had done that, and that was it. It was being dealt with. The situation was in control. But it was the things that I wasn't able to control. So there was sort of one example when we put a cordon in
What's a cordon?
As a blockage in the road, just to control an area, search people and things like that. And the kids out there, they're allowed to drive cars and ride motorbikes. And there was this lad who was about 12 years old. He had his sister on the back of a motorbike, and they went speeding past us, and they hit a speed bump, and she fell off and just flew across the ground.
Oh, man.
And for me, just seeing her, we weren't allowed to approach them because the Taliban were using kids as suicide bombers.
Right.
But I can just see her face looking at me, tears running down her eyes, running down her face, and just I wanted to just go and help her.
Yeah.
Especially as a dad of girls now. That's really what brought back sort of PTSD for me.
Awesome.
Just the things that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
Had no control over.
So when you first came back from serving, did the PTSD kind of surface straight away, or was it quite a while later, or did it sideswipe you?
It did. There were definite signs of it. So we came back from Afghanistan. We all had 12 weeks leave. We had to take 1 week off and then come back to base. And one of my friends had taken his own life in that week. He was struggling as well. He'd beaten his girlfriend up, and out of guilt, he took his own life. So I had that to deal with. I just thought, this can't get any worse, you know. Like, you got to be joking me. And it also immediately put distance between me and my civilian friends. I just felt like they were just living in some bubble.
Right.
Like complete non-reality.
No one else understands.
Yeah, no
it must
one
be so
understands.
isolating.
Yeah. And I just felt like they didn't get it. And they didn't really want to know me. They didn't know how to handle me actually as well. I didn't know how to handle me.
Had you changed yourself? Did you feel like
Yeah.
your behaviours? So how did you change?
Just serious about life. Like I could not adapt to civilian life again. You know, I felt like I had to control every situation because that's what we were doing in Afghanistan. Right. Everything had to be controlled.
So like hyper-vigilant all the time.
Yeah, hyper-vigilant.
It's like you were on guard.
Yeah, constantly. Nightmares started. After I left the Marines, nightmares started. And they were always around two things: imminency and inadequacy. And the
Imminency, what do you mean by that?
As in something's going to happen straight away. So
okay, be on alert.
Yeah, so we were on patrol once, and it was fine. It's a normal patrol. Came back, and we're sitting down having our usual cup of tea, and then there's a massive explosion, and that was when a suicide bomber had detonated. The bomb a few hundred meters up the road at the police compound. It shook the whole building, shook everything. So we had to quickly get up and respond to that.
So even though consciously you knew you were back, well Plymouth, I presume, at some other level, it's like anything can happen.
Yeah.
Which is odd because we know those things don't happen in Plymouth on a day-to-day basis, but your brain hadn't caught up with that reality, with the new context that you were in. It was still unprocessed. And I know you a little bit, Simon, but it's really interesting hearing before that actually in the midst of this, you started taking your faith more seriously. Do you want to explain what that looked like?
Yeah, there was a real definite point when I came to faith. So I lent a lot more heavily on alcohol after Afghanistan. So I was getting drunk probably 3 or 4 times a week. I tried to speak to people about it in the Marines, and they said, "Oh, that's just part of being a Marine." And
It's normal
well, it's
kind
not,
of culture for it.
Yeah.
And was that to try and like get outside of your thoughts,
Yeah,
really, to like
definitely.
as
Escape myself.
anesthesia kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, escape yourself.
But the trouble is, whereas when I used to drink prior to Afghanistan, I was quite a friendly drunk. After that, I was just really aggressive.
An angry drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And it got to the point, it was actually October 31st, Halloween 2010. I'd been drinking sort of 2 nights in a row, spent about 500 quid on drink, I think, in total. And I was on a military base up north doing a driving course. I just went to speak to one of the chaplains there. It was in the evening, and no one was there. They'd gone home, understandably. But I just remember reading, opening the Bible and just trying to find out actually what happened in the end time. So I've been raised as a little bit as a Christian. My mum had taught me about the Bible and stuff. And I just remember reading a revelation about the book of life being opened, and whoever's names were not written in the book of life, they didn't enter into eternal rest. And that really shocked me. And that was the final
That rest is a strong word,
piece in
isn't
the
it?
puzzle. Yeah.
With your brain
Wow.
as it was, rest
Yeah.
is what you wanted.
Yeah.
And I guess that's like flipping heck. I really
Yeah.
want that. Yeah.
And I literally felt my heart skip a beat in that moment. I walked out of there, changed man, and I had so much control over my drinking. I stopped drinking for 10 months. And my anger as well. And my friends just couldn't believe the change.
So you literally went in one man and
Yeah.
came out another man,
Yeah.
a different man.
I think people listening, they might struggle to think. So there's this background fear, or actually sometimes right in the foreground. Then you read something in the Bible that actually sounds really scary as well, but
Yeah.
you come out with peace.
Yeah.
How just put that together for us. What does that? What do you feel that you actually did as a result of reading about a future time where God puts things right? Some people come to him, some don't. The world's restored, but actually that sort of awe and reverence of God brought you peace.
Yeah, so prior to that, I was on my bed, just on my phone to my parents, saying, "Why do I keep doing this to God? Like, why do I keep messing it up?" And that, just reading that part in that part of the Bible was the final piece in a jigsaw puzzle for me. Actually, I did need to turn away from my old way of life and turn to Jesus and accept His eternal life and His forgiveness.
Wow.
And it just clicked. I didn't understand it all fully then, but I had just enough, like a seed of faith, that's that nugget of truth to just walk out of there, and that was it.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's God.
You mentioned your bosses was ripping into you in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And you're really inadequate. But you just told another situation where you felt inadequate and you're letting God down.
Wow.
Was that sort of a repeated thing which you felt? Goodness,
It's
started
a lifelong thing. So nothing against my dad, I love him, but he was probably a stricter disciplinarian. He's quick to discipline, not quick to reaffirm. And so I always thought, I'm not good enough, and I need to just try harder and do better. And years later, sort of 6 months later, I had my sort of PTSD diagnosis. 6 months ago, sorry. Yeah. But with that, a diagnosis of ADHD as well, and that's one of the traits of ADHD. Is you constantly feel like you're letting people down, and that you try harder and you obsess over, hyperfixate on things as well. So
you got some counselling, and you said you got 18 weeks of counselling actually. So actually you realised that, or the counsellor realised you needed quite a lot of support. And then your paths at some point had crossed, because you mentioned that Brian might have carefully suggested you needed a bit more counselling. Tell us a bit about that story.
Have you had counselling that didn't work?
So I had 6 weeks of group counselling through a charity called Combat Stress,
right?
And then 12 weeks of individual sessions. That was cognitive behavioural therapy. That taught me how to manage my triggers, so sounds of helicopters, being in crowded places and things like that. I was on antidepressants at the time, and then they antidepressants are good, but they can have a shelf life, and the doctors will tell you this. And that shelf life for me was about 2 years.
So you mean before you become almost immune to the treatment that they're providing? Do you know what I mean? So your
Don't
body
work anymore, is that?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and your body almost actually reacts completely oppositely.
Right.
I started having suicidal thoughts and things like that, like my kids would be better off without me.
So this is in more recent years.
Yeah,
then?
this was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
And it's not knocking medication. What you're saying is if you're only doing medication but not doing the counselling or the work alongside it, then actually you can get a bit of a kickback. And that's why Brian might have suggested to you, perhaps the work's not done, Simon.
Yeah.
How did you take that when he first suggested it?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the medication, I see that as like the scaffolding that's in place whilst you're repairing the building, if you know what I mean.
That's a helpful analogy.
So I in the end, I cold turkeyed off of them, not by choice, but it's the GP sort of just kept neglecting to renew my prescription. So I just cold turkeyed off of 200 milligrams of sertraline. That's the maximum dose. And that was horrific. Don't do it.
Yes.
Why was it horrific?
Your body just goes into shutdown. You have something called fuzzy head, which is like a throbbing in your head and stuff like that.
So do this properly with your GP.
Under controlled doses. Definitely follow your GP guidance.
So how is Becky with all of this then?
She was amazing. It really took its toll on her though. Thankfully, she's got her parents nearby. They were really supportive. So if I had a bad session with counselling, I would just go upstairs and cry. And
You did, or she did?
I did. Yeah.
Right.
And she would speak to her parents about it. So they were her sort of support pillar.
Wow.
So anyway, cold turkeyed off the antidepressants. And Brian, you're really good at sort of seeing into people. I think seeing what is really going on.
And then saying it.
And saying it. I'm not being afraid to say it. And it really wound me up at the time. You were looking at me, nodding and stuff. And you were saying, but you still got PTSD, haven't you? I was like, no, I don't. No, I'm all right. I've had my counselling sessions, those 18 sessions. And no, you've still got it. And it really wound me up. And I went in and spoke to my colleague, Kate, and I said, he's really wound me up with that. But then over the next couple of weeks, I thought, no, he's right. I know I need to have another bout of counselling, like really deal with it.
Yeah.
Because cognitive behavioural therapy is good at, it teaches you how to sort of deal with your triggers. It doesn't deal with the initial memories.
Oh.
So I had another 24 sessions of counselling, something called EMDR.
Right.
So it's eye movement desensitization, re-stabilization,
Regulation.
Regulation. And it basically reprograms your brain. So all of those traumatic memories, it allows you to process it in a natural way that you should have done in the first place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, we were chatting off air before we started, and Brian, you shared something quite interesting, how you explained about the is it EMDR? Yeah. Would you be happy to share that with us?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. I was like, anything to do with counselling, I'm like super cautious or even sceptical about it.
This is when you came out of the military.
This is just I'd say 20 months ago ish, that sort of thing, maybe less than that. And my wife and I were talking about it. She was even more freaked out than I was, but I just had a peace about it. But we prayed and prayed and prayed, and then I said, God, you just show me what in the world this is all about. I do not want to open up myself to the wrong sort of influences. But if it's okay, we'll go for it. And so and he gave me a picture of it all. And so I had an understanding about REM sleep, the role of REM sleep to process your day-to-day
Which is
stuff.
the rapid eye movement sleep.
Yeah, so when your eyes are giving it rocks from side to side, that's really what's going on, is that your brain is defragging the day and getting ready for the next day. But when you have a lot of trauma, repeated trauma, your brain can't process that. And it stays in, like computer analogy, your RAM, your random access memory, which is your immediate use. And it stays there until the day you die or you get rid of it. And that's really what happens. And so when you hear about these people having like a car backfires or something, and somebody's been to Afghanistan, is on the floor, they're panicking and stressed out, it's because the initial trigger has come back to them 100% of what they had on the day that it first happened.
Right.
And it's huge. It's devastating for them. They've got no control over it. It's just an emotional response to that. So you can imagine how horrendous it's been in Afghanistan or wherever it is. And then you're walking down to Drake's Mall and a bang, and then you're immediately back to that situation. And I've had that many, many times. People telling me this story. I was going to ask you, actually, are there any other triggers, audible triggers that are a struggle for you that you trip
the sound
over?
of helicopters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things in Afghanistan I found really troubling. The Taliban had blown up a bus of civilians, and we were tasked to. The Chinooks were flying in big double-rotored helicopters that you see on armed forces day and things. They were flying in with the civilians, and it was
For you guys to try and treat.
having to take out these women and children with limbs missing.
Yeah.
That was difficult to rationalise.
Yeah.
The point. What's the point of it?
Yeah. Because I know of people who, say in Bagram, that the alarm that was sounded for any sort of flying, they call it ordnance, a bullet, a missile, a bomb, anything going on is ordnance, is the sound of an air horn. Right. So
like a klaxon, like a. You might hear it.
You hear like an aerosol thing.
Yes.
And you hear them at football matches, don't you? Stuff like that. Well, that's what was used in Bagram to alert everybody that there is stuff in the air and you need to get under cover immediately. And so I've had a number of people say, whenever I hear a car horn, an air horn, or any sort of horn, I am immediately back in Bagram. Which is so
common, isn't it, when you think about it? That could be a daily occurrence.
Exactly. And so this is the weight of mental stress or difficulties that people are having on a day-to-day basis and how it impacts them, which is huge. But it's not just them, it's their wives and their kids and the parents. And the ripple of that just goes out and out to the wider family. And so all of a sudden, this bloke, is normally a bloke who's been in this combat situation, comes back and they are mentally injured and the family has to then soak up the injury.
Okay.
So if you look at stuff, how Simon was, and to be honest, he isn't that bad compared to other people that I've met, how the wives, a guy beat his girlfriend up. She probably didn't do much to warrant being beaten up.
It was a trigger, perhaps.
Yeah. And so, it's just a horrendous weight that people have got to carry. I mean, it's not just war situation. Offline, I said about somebody I know whose husband was dying. He did die, but every morning she had to wake up to the certain knowledge that the person who she loved is going to die.
Yeah.
Every day she had to wake up to that. Every day she had to do with her child. Every day she had to, and it's that everyday thing.
It's taking its toll.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah, and it compounds and it just adds on, and in the end you just can't cope anymore.
It's because I guess as well, going back to your defragging analogy, once that's happened, you're filing the information in the hard drive or discarding it.
Yeah.
The pile becomes so big you can't be efficient in discarding it or putting it in the hard drive.
No. So when I was praying about it, God gave me a picture about it, and it completely put my mind at rest. So the picture is this: you've had a big family meal and you're doing a washing up. Right at the end of the washing up, you empty the dirty water into the basin, and it just doesn't go down the plug hole. So what do?
I get my finger in and swirl it.
That's it. That's what EMDR is.
The chunks of carrot and the things.
That's what EMDR is.
It's the little wiggle of.
So
what people might do if they were having healthy sleep or they hadn't had such a big load put upon them by an incident or something like that. So this is what people are normally doing as they sleep, as they go through life, within the frame of normality.
Yes.
Because life, even as a normal life can be difficult. But the normal, good, healthy sleeper within a relatively normal life can just process this stuff on an ongoing basis.
And another interesting factor with regard to veterans particularly is that they don't want to be in their own head. They can't be in their own head. It's awful being in their own head. And so what a lot of people do is they self-medicate with alcohol. Now, it does work. It does get you to sleep really, really quickly. But that also really messes up with your REM sleep because you met your circadian rhythms and stuff. That's designed to help you cope with life. If you start putting alcohol in the system, it messes with your circadian rhythms, and therefore you don't get the REM sleep. So the thing that you very desperately need, which is REM sleep, you just messed up with alcohol.
You're sacrificing the REM sleep
Yes.
with the need to very quickly go to sleep.
Yeah,
So you
I've
almost
gotta get
knock
out of my
yourself
head.
out with the alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's a very quick 4 or 5 hour sleep. Then you're back out of it, and then you've got to deal with your thoughts at 3 a.m. or whenever.
Interestingly, if you look at the sleep pattern of people who've had this, do the drink thing, they are completely awake at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. It's not as if they're going to go back down. They go up and they stay up and they're wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is the exact opposite of what they need because of the trauma.
So is this your experience, Brian? As Emma was sort of alluding to, Emma knows you a bit more. I don't know you much, but you've...
It sort of is. I left the military in 1989.
Okay.
And 40 years after the Falklands, which is 1982.
Yeah.
So that's 23 years ago, 43 years ago. I sort of bumbled along, really. And I didn't really I didn't think there was an issue. Nobody who knew me thought I was like a raving idiot and needed fixing. But then I found myself hiding behind a tree when the air ambulance went over, and I thought...
This is when you were walking the dog.
Just a couple of years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. And I thought, gosh, I've gone from awareness to behaviour. And my understanding of life really is if your behaviour starts involuntarily changing, there's something getting worse.
Yeah.
It's worse now than it was. So I went back and had a chat with my wife and said, do you think I've changed in the last couple of years? And she said, actually, yeah, you've become miserable and not morbid, but it's like recalcitrant. It's like
a bit more cynical, maybe.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's good. I was very involved in men's stuff at church. Very involved. Stepped away from that 100%.
So there's a bit of hermiting going on, a bit of withdrawal from...
I don't want to say this because it sounds mean and nasty, but I just can't stand being around idiots. And I've got no grace, no tolerance of people who are just... I mean, most of the people are just great. But there are triggers within the people which I just couldn't cope with. Yeah. I just got to walk away from that. Wow. And so I did. And so isolation is a big factor. I was happiest on my own, happiest in the trees. And it just... I just kept on finding ways to make it a little bit better. And I found these ways. But then when Julie said what she did, I thought, right, this can get a lot worse. I've seen people really struggling with PTSD, and I don't know what my future looks like. And I do not want that for me.
Wow. So these are we were talking about these sort of different categories of people who are listening. So one of them is people, it might be military, but it might be childhood traumas or anything, who would say, yeah, I probably do have PTSD, but maybe find themselves in the category, I've just convinced myself I need to put up with it. Yeah. And what I'm hearing from both of you is there is hope through this. Yeah. And then there's the second category of people, and I think this conversation will be helpful for them, that hadn't even considered they might have PTSD for all sorts of reasons. It might even be that they went in the military, but actually what we're touching on, you have been in your stories, that some of the indications that you might be, and they're linked to quality of sleep, depending on things like alcohol or other things to get out of your mind, but also your responses to things that you, like alarms, but also to people or just to normal life, where you're getting angry, you're getting fearful, that other people seem to be able to cope with. This is now raising the possibility that there might be something going on. But Simon, you talked about a third category of people, which sort of says, well, I hear about people with PTSD, but that's for the really big stuff.
Yeah, and I think with that as well, so that's the sort of category I found myself in. My tour of Afghanistan wasn't overly dangerous, really. We were all split up, so there are other companies doing all of the frontline fighting constantly. And in my own mind, I was sort of rationalising, thinking, no, they're the ones that should have PTSD, so therefore I just need to get on with it. And I think that's important for everyone to sort of think about, because it's not just armed forces personnel or emergency services that can have PTSD. It can be like, I used to stack shelves in Tesco. Like, you can do a job like that, and if you've got a really bad manager and the work rate is horrific and the expectancy is really bad, then you can develop severe stress, and then on the back of that, PTSD as well.
One thing that struck me, Brian, as you were talking, is that I think you're an incredibly humble guy, because my pride gets in the way so much. And to go 40 years and to have a job in it and to think I should be doing better than this, how can I admit that I'm one of the ones who is still struggling with this? I think to be able to, first of all, even have a conversation with your wife and say, and what a humble question to ask, how have I been coming across recently? That's a really brave and humble question to ask.
If you know my wife, it was very brave.
But I think that's beautiful. But we have talked a lot in this podcast about honesty with God and honesty with people. And they've got to be the right people because, you know, it's very precious and very vulnerable to open up about stuff that's difficult. And in your job, and we are pointing people towards professionals in this podcast who we can be vulnerable with and know that it's contained. But also we're aware that life happens on a day-to-day basis. We're aware that professionals aren't there 24/7. You know, Simon, how much has friendship played a role? I mean, I've known you only a few months. I don't know everything about your story. But now that you feel that you are in a better place, maybe not fully recovered, I don't know, what are the helpful things non-professionally that you are doing on a day-to-day basis that you think gives you the best chance at walking in hope, if you like?
I think during my counselling, I don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking when I started taking the antidepressants because I wanted those to work. And since then, I felt like I'd always wanted to come off of alcohol. I've always hated my dependence on it. But yeah, since sort of finishing the antidepressants, going through the next bout of counselling, I just ran a lot. I trained a lot in the gym 4 times a week, which is, it's really helpful because it just sort of gives you those endorphins. In terms of friendship with Christ, I was sort of midway through my 24 sessions of counselling, and I was sort of praying about it, and I just felt God saying, when are you going to bring me into this? I love that you're having counselling, but when are you going to bring me into this? And I felt like I'd hit a bit of a wall halfway through. It was really tough. And I just started praying to Jesus, really. You know, it says in the Bible, he's our friend. You know, I just started praying for his help and his guidance with it, and his help and his healing. And he did, and things just started to click, like with the counselling. I made a lot of really good progress over the next 6 sessions after that. And then the final 6 sessions were just finishing sessions, really, just covering sort of minor things, you know. But it's really taught me just to lean on him as a friend, you know, not some strict authority figure that I was used to from the Marines, from my upbringing.
And actually, you know, Jesus says, doesn't he, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And therefore carrying things that we're not designed to carry, you know, is ill-fitting and it hurts. And we waste energy and time and opportunities really by carrying these bags, you know.
Lots of todays get lost.
Yes,
to those
absolutely,
stones.
Absolutely. So really, we just want to encourage people to really seek help, you know, and just to not ignore those early signs, those things, you know, not wanting to be around people or responding in certain ways, and not to dismiss anything that we might consider that is traumatic and created any kind of long-lasting effects.
And not to dismiss, we've mentioned many things like anger and isolation, which are perhaps the more obvious signs of PTSD, but also the response to our episode might be, well, I haven't got PTSD. That itself as being an indication that you might, because of the defensiveness might be the wrong word, but in the way that it's in an unhelpful way trying to protect itself might itself be an indication that you do.
Oh, well, we want to thank you guys. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Brian, for joining us. We've had a really wonderful time sharing with you and talking with you during this podcast. And thank you.
You do. And we haven't done this before, but I do feel slightly prompted to ask Simon to finish by praying for anyone who's listening, whether they call themselves a Christian or not. We've talked a lot about our faith, and perhaps Simon, you'd finish by praying for people who are struggling. Thank you, Simon.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you have made a way for us to come to you and be in a relationship with you by giving us your son Jesus as our friend and our counsellor, Lord. And we thank you that there is healing for everyone out there who is struggling, Lord, no matter what it is, no matter how trivial they might feel like it is, Lord, there is healing for them. And we do just pray that you would open doors for them to receive that healing, that they would live a fulfilled life, lives that you have given them, that you have designed for them, Lord, and that they would just feel fulfilled day in, day out, and able to cope with burdens and stress from now on, Lord. And we just pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Hope in the City. We hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have, please like and also share, because it might be that somebody else needs to hear this, and it would be helpful to them too. If you would like to interact with us, please contact us via the socials. If there's any subjects, any questions, any issues that you'd like us to discuss, then please do get in touch.
And we have an email address, hope@crplymouth.co.uk. This is our second season, and again, there might be some themes that you would love us to cover, and you might have some questions. We love doing our Q&R sessions as well, so please do get in touch, and bless you.